Hello and welcome to Sim.bc, where it's time for week 2 of Saturday News Recap, because this is a series that I'm quite enjoying, mate, so far. It was a nice episode last week, it's gonna be a nice one this week's, mate. Have 3 little things for you all. 2 international incidents and 1 about me. And the 1 about me you're only going to need to hear about once a year, mate. And then it's going to be all over, right? Until next year. So, should we start with the 2 international incidents then? And I know what all of you are thinking. All of you are thinking, wow, he's probably going to talk about H&M. That H&M, that shame commercial, the one children collection that I put out, and it was just such a backlash from the community that you think that the people at H&M in the marketing department should have done something about it, but they didn't. They didn't actually seem to be able to anticipate the kind of backlash that they were going to get. And what am I talking about? I'm of course talking about the coolest monkey in the jungle. I'm gonna put a picture up on screen right here, right now, so you can see it. Probably not going to include the face because I know that this guy is like all over the goddamn place, but at least here we're keeping him anonymous. At least we're trying, right? Because it's not his fault that he was in the picture. He probably was very proud of being in the picture, and he was just utilized and used by the market, right? By H&M to be in this position. So we're going to try and cut out his head there. Not for any offensive reason, just because, well, he didn't do anything wrong. We're just here for the content of the coolest monkey in the jungle idea. And the problem here is quite outstanding, because when most people view this, they view this and they think that's racist. Because this kid is a kid of color, a black kid, however you want to state it. That's up to you, mates. And most people tend to say, well, the coolest monkey in the jungle, and he's black, that tends to be inclined to a racial offense. However, when I watched it, I was just thinking it's marvelous, right? It's amazing that society has gotten so far from racism that H&M can put out this shirt with the coolest monkey in the jungle on a kid of color, and it shouldn't mean a thing. Now that's how I viewed it personally, and I know that we are having problems in Sweden with racism as well, but I would like to argue that in Sweden we have a very, well, the average problem isn't as high or as great as all over the world, as other parts of the world, because I know that in other parts of the world there are people who are having considerable difficulties with this subject, with racism and discrimination. So I know that if you look at the global picture, the international picture, the international playground, I totally understand why it got the backlash that it did. There are lots of communities in different countries who are having a strong white against black community. Unfortunately, that is the truth. We cannot, just hide that. We can't look away from that. It's something that we just have to accept so that we can work on a solution for the problem. However, in Sweden and in the Nordic countries overall, I would argue yet again that this problem is quite low, at least in relation to the rest of the world. So when I viewed this and people were saying that it was racist, I was thinking, it's racist to call it racist, because when I viewed it, I didn't have at all any opinion about racism in my head when I first watched it. Now when I watch it in the new light, I'd say, from a new perspective with this new gained knowledge, well, it's kind of obvious where they're coming from, especially since I think that they released another part of the collection where there was a white kid saying like something like survival expert, the mangrove of the jungle, or something like that. Not at all something that has to do with any white, and I'm going to use this wrongly now, any white stereotype, even though I know that a monkey is obviously not a person of color's stereotype. That is just outright wrong. However, many people were upset about this, and they've suffered the backlash of it because of this. Yet again, I was thinking, shouldn't the marketing department and the marketing team at H&M think that, we're releasing this and there are quite few problems in the world regarding this subject, people might get pissed. Now, if I was working in marketing, I would probably push the same idea that I had when I first watched it, and that was, well, this is a conscious choice by us that we're putting especially this piece of clothing with this logo, with this typing, with this meaning behind it, on a child of color, because it shouldn't have a meaning behind it. It should just be a shirt. Because again, that's how I viewed it when I first watched it yet again. After people pointed it out, it's quite obvious why this has created such a big backlash, but I think that the marketing department at H&M wasn't actually engaging in a racial, what you would say, offense when they put this out. I think that they actually rather wanted to try and do the opposite, but it just turned out as it did. Now I'm trying to kind of defend H&M here in a sense. Now I know that it is a problem, people are viewing it as a problem, so why not just take it away and let people, who is experiencing it as a problem, not having the problem anymore. That's a better way that's a solution, right? Just take it away, because some people sees it as a problem, so take it away. Problem solved. But yet again, would like to raise this perspective of it as well, because as I know, many of you have probably already seen it, and this huge backlash of racism. I would just argue that I think that it was a conscious choice by the marketing team to actually put this shirt on this specific kid, and I think that they did it against racism, even though the actual outcome of it was the opposite. Moving into the second part of today's little news show then is Chinese investment in Eastern Europe. And this is something that has been happening for a while. It's not something new for this week specifically, but I think that this week specifically there was a news piece about China investing in railway work in Czechoslovakia, something like that, even though that's two countries at the moment. And why is this seen as a problem? Well, from the EU's point of view and perspective, this is seen as a problem because EU obviously, like not Europe in itself, but the European Union wants to be the organization which all of the other countries are dependable on, because that means that the EU can force the other countries to meet certain standards, to meet certain regulations, to meet certain human rights and do things a certain way. If China then goes in and invests and fund different things in these Eastern European countries that aren't yet part of the EU, that tends to create a problem. Or if they are part of the EU but doesn't get the investment from the EU because the EU doesn't deem it to be investable, or rather they don't see the favor of actually investing, and then China comes along and invests, that decreases the power of the European Union inside Europe. Is that a bad thing or a good thing? Well, depends on how you view it. I myself think that the European Union is a good thing in the sense that it is showing other people that we are a union, that we are going to cooperate, that we can cooperate even outside the boundaries of our own countries. However, politically and economically, it doesn't make much sense, at least as far as I've been taught and the information I've come in contact to at the university and the people I've spoken to. Mostly it's negative, even though we're saying that, well, it's still a good thing because it shows this, yet again, this unity, but that's a video all by itself. Now, what is potential problems by China investing in the Eastern European countries? Well, it basically says, since they're investing in such a low amount, and people are saying, well, they're only investing 3 billion, right, in each individual country, let's say, a round figure, whilst the EU is actually investing $80 billion into the East European countries. Well, that's actually a problem, because if China is investing a lower amount and giving out more work, so they're actually getting paid less for the work that they're doing, they're having some sort of political influence over the countries, because they can say, we helped you. They're getting good favor with the Eastern European countries, and yet again, this is lowering the power of the European Union in the EU. As I understood it from the article that I read, it was just one of the many articles that is talking about this. The US isn't particularly happy about this because China is apparently investing in some other areas where they have interests in, and so the EU and the US is apparently on the same page here, looking at this as a concern. However, I think that if the market isn't supplying it, then someone should, right? And if China chooses to supply the Eastern European countries with investments, well, it's all for the better. Am I right? Am I right? No, but the thing is as well that if the Eastern European countries are saying that we can't pay right now, can we pay back in the future? This makes them liable to China, which obviously is, yet again, a strike against the European Union, because they're not eligible to the European Union, they're not in debt to the European Union, they're in debt to China, and if they're in debt to China, then China has quite a big understanding and quite a bit of say of how things should go in the country. Maybe not now, but in the future, and it helps build this positive relation between China and the Eastern European countries. Yet again, I think that's good. I think that building a good, a good international relationship is always good. Then there's just a question of what type of political views are also then projected onto the Eastern European countries that the EU is trying to make them get away from. The former Soviet Union was a communistic political situation, and some people deem China to be the same, even though they're called the People's Republic of China, which says a part about democracy, because they have the People's Republic of China. It's not the one person's Republic of China, it's everybody's Republic of China. So one can also argue that if that is the case, then they're actually influencing it in a positive way, the Eastern European countries. But that was also something that has been on the wall, so to say, of the latest couple of days, and that was the two international news and what I think about them in a short notice. But then we have the one news, right? The one news story that's concerning me. Moi, right? Not international anymore, so you can tune out if you don't think that's interesting. But I turned 22 this week. Yes, on the 10th of January. Yet another year older. Am I another year wiser? Well, that's up for society to decide, because I'm a student, right? And I'm just being fed the information that the university deemed me to need. So am I wiser? That depends on how you view the educational system. Am I a bit older? Well, yeah, that's undisputable. Am I a bit happier? Well, always, right? We're getting older, that's always fun. Getting into more entitlements, more responsibility, more possibilities, and more opportunities, because I'm taking my graduation from my bachelor this upcoming summers. Then I'm going to be free. No, I'm actually looking for a master's right now, probably, or just going back to France. Having all them things up in the air, mate. So that was the latest news from this week. It was H&M, the shame, the scam, and the problem about racism, the casual racism, so to say, that some people called it, that they were just trying to slip it under the rug, right? Like nothing happened. Even though I would argue that, well, there are some perspectives and some lights that you can see that maybe H&M did this consciously, and maybe it isn't that big of a deal, and it shouldn't be seen as that big of a deal, because that is racism in itself. Quite of a hard bargain to buy and to drive. I know most people just say racism, but it should be a topic that I think should be discussed a bit further than just classify it as something and then just not talk about it. It should be both sides argue for why it could be good as well. It could build a good mental image, even though I understand the obvious outcry for it. Then the second was this Chinese investment in Eastern Europe. Is this bad? Well, it definitely lowers the East European countries' liability to the European Union and increases it towards China. Is that a bad thing or a good thing? Well, only the future can tell, if we should be honest here, right? Because they're the People's Republic of China, so technically that should be quite well. And I am 22 years old. Am I another year wiser? Well, up for you to decide, and up for the educational system to decide if I have become another year wiser. But that was everything from me today, mates. That was the Saturday news recap from week 2 of 2018. Hope you have a good one, mates, and I'll see you tomorrow with another chapter of the book. It's gonna be all good, mates, and all great. See you, mates.